I mentioned in the previous lesson that percent is just another way to express fractions and decimals. So if we look at some fractions such as 2/5, what is that as a percent? Well, the easy way to convert that fraction into a percent is to first convert it into a decimal. In the previous section on decimals, we learned how to convert a fraction such as 2/5 into a decimal, and we know that that would be 0.4. Now this is 4/10, which is the same thing as 40/100ths. And since percent is per hundredths, then we would have 40%. Let's take another one. 3/4. 3/4 is 0.75. 75 hundredths. 75 hundredths percent is 75%. Now, if you notice something about the decimal point, when we convert from decimal to percent, we actually multiplied here by 100, and we moved that decimal point 2 places over to the right. And here, same thing, we moved the decimal point over 2 places to the right. And so to convert a decimal into a percent, you move the decimal point 2 places over to the right. So if we have something like 1/2, 1/2 as a decimal we know is 0.5. Move that decimal point over 2 places, and we get 50%. If we have a decimal such as this, 3/100ths, move that decimal point over 2 places to the right, that's 3%. If we have a decimal such as this, move the decimal point over 2 places to the right, and we get 12.5%. Sometimes percents are more than 100. So if we have a decimal such as 2.5, move the decimal point over 2 places to the right, and we get a percent of 250%. Now suppose we want to convert a percent into a decimal or even into a fraction. So if we have something like 40%, we could write that as 40 hundredths and do it that way. But remember that when we converted a decimal into a percent, we moved that decimal point 2 places to the right. So the really simple way to convert it back from a percent to a decimal to go the other direction is to simply move that decimal point over 2 places to the left. Now we know that every whole number has a decimal point. It's kind of hiding, it's invisible, but every whole number has a decimal point right there at the end. So if we move this decimal point back over, 40% equals 0.40. Or if we have, let's say, 65% as a decimal, that would be 0.65, 65 hundredths. Or let's say we have a decimal like this, a percent like this, 125%. convert that into a decimal, move the decimal point 2 places to the right, and we get 1.25. So this shows the basics, the basic idea of converting decimals into percents and percents into decimals. And if you can do that, then it's simply, if you wanted to include fractions, you would simply convert the fraction into a decimal and then into a percent. Or if we want to convert any of these into fractions, this will be 40 hundredths, which is the same thing as 2/5. And this would be 65 hundredths, which is the same thing as 13/20. And this would be 1 and 25 hundredths, or 1 and 1/4. So we can convert back and forth using both fractions and decimals into and out of percents. The three are interchangeable.